All right, I'm going to use this mic here. Keep everybody awake. We save the best for last, right? I hope so. So, thanks for sticking around today. My name's Kurt Steinke, soil fertility nutrient management here at Michigan State. Couple things want to talk about today. Going to walk you through some things that we're looking at. You know, one question that I'll ask everybody is, do you think about your spring N on your winter wheat more than fall management? Think about that. Do you think about your spring N rate, your spring N timing, etc., more than doing anything in the fall? Or who even thinks about fall management of wheat? Raise your hand. Not many, right? And so I'll throw this out at you. I'm going to give you 3 dates. Try to figure out what they have in common, right? March 30th, February 27th, and April 5th. March 30th, April 27th, or February 27th and April 5th. There's almost a 40-day spread in those dates. In the last 3 years, that's the first 70-degree day we had here in springtime in Michigan. Anywhere from February 27th all the way to April 5th. You look at 23, 24, and 25. All right, so you got to prep for that wheat to maybe get started a little bit earlier in the season, right? Here's another fun fact. What's the biggest difference between this spring, summer, and last spring, summer? Is it moisture? Temperature? Temperature. All right, and I just looked this up the other day. We've seen some struggling beans. We've seen some struggling corn. Wheat was a little bit slower out of the chute. You start looking at when we finally crossed that 50-degree soil temperature permanently, right? So we stayed above 50 degrees permanently right here this year, June 3rd. Think about your corn planting date. Think about your soybean planting date. That's why they were a little bit yellow early in the season, right? June 3rd. Any idea last year, spring of 24, when we crossed that 50-degree soil temperature threshold permanently? April 27th. April 27th last year, June 3rd this year. Right? That's 5.5 weeks. That's a lot, right? So that's something we really have to think about when we start talking about winter wheat, right? We get caught up talking about weather variability, but especially with winter wheat, can we use some of this variability as an opportunity, right? Start looking at when soil temperatures drop below 50 degrees in the fall. If you go back to about pre-2005, for about Lansing, Michigan, we would drop below 50 degrees in the fall about the second or third week in October. The last 15 plus years, we drop below 50 degrees in the fall the second or third week in November. Right? That's a lot. Why? Because we're still nitrifying nitrogen when we're above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. When do we tend to plant wheat? September, October, right? So opportunity. Can we start right to finish well? Can we get that plant off to a good start in the fall to capitalize on some of these late fall and early spring warm-ups that we tend to get the last couple of years? And so we started this study, a couple of variations of the study, the last couple of years. This year I call it the some is good, more is better study. Right? And why do I do that? Because I've learned over the last 15, 16 years, if I say, oh, you need 2 tons of something, many of you go, well, I'm going to add 25%, or I'm going to double it because Steinke's too conservative, right? If I say 30 pounds, let's do 60. If I say 50, let's do 100, right? So started this study last year looking at some is good, more is better, looking at about 6 different fall management practices, all right? So everything along here got 100 pounds of N at green up. Right, in the spring. Right, so about that second week in April, everything got 100 pounds of N, so that's standard. So the differences that we're looking at have to relate to fall management. All right, so down here, first plot we're looking at is our check plot. Right, the plot no one wants to look at, no one wants to put on their farm because it's zero yield, which we know is not true. right? Probably be anywhere from about 35 to 60 bushel, depending on the year. Well, that's doing nothing at all. No N, no fertilizer, nothing across the board. Plant it, forget it, right? We start moving on to this second one here. Here we're looking at just your standard 100 pounds of N at green up. Do nothing in the fall at all. So you can use that as a comparison. You can look at row fill, look at tillering, look at head size, look at number of kernels per head. We'll look at all those parameters, but you can kind of use that as a gauge, right? I'll take another step down here. Our next one is a low rate of fall applied N. All right, so here we're looking at about 20 pounds of N applied at plant. All right, so about September 20th, last fall. Now, what do we know about fall N and wheat? If you plant on time, that wheat can take advantage of what you do in the fall. All right, we've done this for a number of years. If you plant late, that plant doesn't stand a chance at tapping into whatever you got applied because it doesn't have a root system. So the idea that the later you plant, the more you have to do is a falsehood, right? You have to plant on time to get that root system to take advantage of whatever you apply. So here we're looking at 20 units of N applied at plant in the fall. Here we double that. We went up to about 40 units of N applied at plant in the fall. You can see a little bit of a difference there. We'll keep moving on here. Here we're looking at phosphorus, right? Fall applied phosphorus using triple superphosphate, low rate, about 65 pounds of P2O5. And again, you can kind of compare this back to what we did with that green up N only plot, that second plot there. You see a little bit of a phos response here. Why? Why do we see a little bit of a phos response? What's the first question, all you soilies out there? What do you got to know? Soil test value, right? The soil test value here is about 30 parts per million for AP1, almost right down to that critical threshold. That's why we see a little bit of this phos response going on. Now, especially with this low rate of phos, jump it up, we doubled it up. We got 130 pounds of P2O5 going on right here. A little bit of a response going on, right? And this is phos only, not MAP. It's TSP, all right? So we take that N component out of it. So as we go along, you can kind of see what fall N does for you at low and high, what fall P does for you, low and high. We keep moving down here. Let's talk about some sulfur. Here we got fall applied sulfur at about 25 units of S as gypsum. All right, again, applied at plant. See quite a dramatic response here with tillering and head size as compared to everything else that we see up to this point in time. And this has become much, much more common with our N-responsive crops in the state of Michigan. We see tremendous S response going on this year already with corn, tremendous S response going on with wheat, a little bit with soybean. That may or may not stick around depending on the weather. So here we got 25 units of S. We'll move up another plot. Here we got 50 units of S. A little bit of a difference, not as much. You start talking about sulfur on wheat. Typically, again, about that 25 units is what we need for wheat in the fall or spring, right? It depends a little bit on the amount of risk that you want to take if you want to apply it in that fall or that spring season. Depends a little bit on how much winter precipitation we get between planting and green up time. So again, got that N response, got that P response, got that sulfur response going on right here. Next plot over, potassium, that potash. Here we're looking at 75 pounds of K2O. Doesn't look too good, does it? Again, what's going on here? Soil test value. Where we're standing, soil test value for K is down to about 60 parts per million. So you might be thinking, if you're low to begin with and we're applying potash, why aren't we seeing the response? Right? Potash is not a quick fix, right? And that's one of the things we start seeing across soil testing across Michigan. K levels are dropping fairly quickly. Some of that has to do with pricing. Some of that has to do, K is the third number on the bag, so when things get tight, it's the first nutrient dropped. But point here is, because we're down around 60 parts per million, it takes probably about 3 to 4 years to get this up. So when your soil test K levels drop and you think you can go out with potash at 200 to 300 pounds of K2O and the problem solved, it's not solved, right? You're going to have to go out with that maintenance plus application for anywhere from about 3 to 4 years from when you start that potash application. So that's the low rate of potash in the fall. We move up one here. Here we got high rate of potash in the fall. Not much of a response here also. 150 pounds of K2O applied at plant. And again, we notice lack of tillering, which is expected because our soil test values are below critical. Now, up here we start to get a little interesting. So here we used a co-grant fertilizer combination product, put out about 15 units of N, 50 pounds of P2O5, 12.5 pounds of sulfur, and about a pound of zinc. All right, it went out this product at about 125 pounds per acre. Look at the difference that we see here. Look at the difference in tillering. Look at the difference in row closure. Look at the difference in head size, number of heads, size of that head, number of kernels per head, etc. This is that nitrogen and sulfur response that we're talking about, right? We tend to see this a little bit more now than we have in previous years. So if some is good, next plot over, more must be better, right? We doubled that rate up to about 30 units of N, 100 pounds of P2O5, 25 units of S, and 2.5 pounds of zinc. Again, a little bit more of a response with row closure and row fill and head size, but not substantially more than we see at that low rate. So we know at that threshold, we're probably maxed out for that overall response. Now, the question we get is, well, you got N and you got P and you got S here. What's causing the response that we see? That's where we go down to these last two plots where we got good old AMS, ammonium sulfate, right? And here we got about low rate of AMS, 15 units of N, 12.5 pounds of S. We start to see that similar response with tillering. Again, row closure, row fill, head size, etc. And we double that up to a 2x rate, and we have 30 units of N and about 25 units of S, and we can see that plant respond. So we know we get that nitrogen and sulfur response. Again, look at your fall management. There are lots of management practices we can do in the fall season for winter wheat especially, to start right to finish well. Set that plant up to capitalize on some of these autumn growing conditions, right? So you can jump out of the chute come springtime whenever it warms up, whether it's February, March, or April, because we don't know, right? We don't want to have an early green up and that plant's not prepared to respond, right? And so again, we'll have yield numbers as we go through here this summer. I'll talk to you all this fall and winter to kind of see where we're at. But don't forget some of those fall management practices. Get an updated soil test, right? That's your first rule of thumb. If you think you have an updated one, look at the date on that report, because oftentimes it's probably 3 to 4 years older than you might think it is, right? But look at some of these practices. It's not just all about nitrogen in the fall with timely planted winter wheat. Look at some of these other combinations. And yes, we do get that N to S response going on with our N responsive crops. The other thing I want to talk about, I'm going to stay here. We have some other signs down there. We got a new N timing study this year looking at about 4 different N application timings. Some of it is at plant, right? Looking at all of your nitrogen applied at planting for winter wheat. So we applied everything up front about September 20th. And then we have a treatment that we applied everything November 22. And why November 22? That's when soil temperatures drop below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So why did we pick that date? Below 50 degrees, we do not nitrify nearly as quickly. So a lot of our nitrogen can stick around till springtime. And so that plot down there looks almost better than our freeze up and our green up plots, which were applied in March and April. All right, so we'll take yield off that. We'll see what that looks like. I'll update everybody on that come late summer, fall, and early winter. We also have a late applied N combination to that study, looking at whatever your timing is in spring or fall, looking at about 40 units of N applied at Feek 7, right, to see if we get that response. So remember, the earlier you apply your N, the more opportunity you have for losses. So if you're tillered, you're dense, you're looking good, you can wait till that green up, that Feeks 4 to Feeks 5 range. If you planted a little late, maybe you want to bump that up a little bit in springtime, maybe closer to Feeks 3. But it's something to think about when you look at planting date with regards to N management on winter wheat. So, questions? Yep, so the question was, with this fall management study, was the application broadcast or banded? Everything was broadcast. There was no banded or on the drill fertilizer applied. Good question. John? Parts per million zinc on the soil test, everything was above 2.5. So everything was 2.5 to about 3.1. Question was, have we done any copper work? We have not done any copper work. Believe it or not, we've never seen an official copper deficiency in the state of Michigan. I think the closest I've seen with copper deficiency is my colleague in Kentucky has seen copper deficiency on corn at one location. Copper levels here aren't deficient, but we've never seen a recorded copper deficiency on field crops in Michigan, on mineral soils, right? You get muck and whatnot. That's a little bit different. Good question. Justin.
Late November nitrogen, what's the source of it? Like a ESN or straight urea? Or?
Question was, with the end timing study we have down here with that late November applied nitrogen, it was urea. Yep.
Your nitrogen trials, have you or would you consider in the future trying different types of nitrogen, your 28% versus, your AMS and urea?
Yep. Question was, with nitrogen trials, have we considered looking at different sources of N with different timings, etc.? Yes, we always look at different sources. We've become a little bit more of a fan with some of the liquid sources. 28 especially, you get a little bit more accurate of a spread, right? Than something like urea. We tend to see a little more, on the commercial side, a few more whoopsies and overlaps with urea, right? Compared to drop nozzles, stream jets, things like that. So we like the liquid. It's a little bit more accurate, a little bit more precise, I would say. But at the end of the day, nitrogen's nitrogen, right? If you apply the right source at the right placement and at the right time, there's not a large difference between them. The thing you have to think about when you start comparing something like maybe 28 versus urea is weather conditions. Because remember, when you apply UAN, you got about a quarter of that N that's nitrate, right? And so that can move readily. That can also be taken up immediately if there's water. Versus something like urea that has to nitrify over time. You could see anywhere from probably about a 7 to 10 day delay in that uptake in the plant between those two sources. And then you get into some of your inhibitors and some of your controlled release sources too. So again, a combination, source by time by placement. Other questions? All right. I think we'll wrap it up. If there is anything else, let me know. I'll stick around. Appreciate your time today, and I will stick around for some questions. And hope everybody has a good start to summer and a successful wheat harvest. Thank you.